and I don't doubt that the government front bench will have heard it as well. Hilary Benn.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The reason that I rise to participate in this debate is that just under 2 years ago, a constituent wrote to me and he revealed that he has a brain tumour, and he asked me to go along to a meeting, the all-party group, which was going to discuss ways in which we could try and find a cure. So I went along, and I must confess, little did I know then that I would end up taking part in the inquiry. We had six evidence sessions. We heard from a lot of people, and the report, which the honourable gentleman referred to, distills in the recommendations what we heard from those who contributed and were very patient in answering many, many questions that we put to them. And I want to pay tribute to the honourable member for St Ives, who chairs the APPG and chaired the inquiry. He does so brilliantly, cheerfully, and in a way that has brought out the best from all of the people who appeared before us, who came along to draw upon their expertise, to share their frustrations, to offer their ideas and their suggestions. And it's been an honour and a privilege to work with him and all the other honourable members who are here who have also taken part. I'd also like to thank the wonderful Secretariat of the Brain Tumour Research Charity for supporting us in our work and for pulling the report together so skillfully. A diagnosis of cancer is a terrible thing, although statistics tell us that 1 in 2 of us will receive one during our lifetime. I think most of us, if we were honest, would say we wince when we hear that word, because all too often it conjures up the idea of a downward path to the end of our lives. And any of us who have been through that experience, either ourselves or in my case with those we love, knows exactly what that feels like. But death is not always the outcome. Our lives are not preordained. And we have seen real advances in the treatment of certain types of cancer in recent years. Breast cancer is a really good example of that. And overall, I'm advised cancer survival rates in the UK have doubled in the last 40 years. But when it comes to brain tumours, the blunt truth is that there has been almost no progress at all. The 5-year survival rate for glioblastoma, which is the most aggressive form, is 6.8%. 6.8%. And the average length of survival is between 12 and 18 months. And that is the answer. I will give way.
The honourable member refers to the survival rates of 18 months. Actually, the survival rate is 9 months, because the figure that the right honourable member uses suggests that everybody gets to the stage of treatment and completes treatment. 9 months. That's what somebody who is diagnosed with a glioblastoma has to expect as a life expectancy.
I absolutely take the point that my honourable friend makes, and it reinforces, I think, in all of us, the awareness of just how awful this diagnosis is. And it is the answer to the question that every person who receives such diagnosis will ask, Doctor, how long have I got? Well, 8-9 months is no time at all. And as one of the consultants who is quoted in the report says, Dr. Matt Williams, who's a clinical oncologist, every week I have to tell patients that there is nothing more we can offer. I have been a consultant for 10 years, and these conversations are the same as when I started. Now, that is why discovering that you have a brain tumour is a devastating diagnosis. One patient, also quoted in the report, says, "It is devastating living with a time bomb in your head," which I thought was a very a very good description of what it must feel like. And in those circumstances, what do patients want? What do loved ones want? What all of us want, it is to make sure that we are doing every single thing that we possibly can to try and change that. Of course I'll give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving way. I speak about this publicly from time to time, and every time I do, I'm always struck by the number of people who will say to me, "Thank you for doing that, because this took my father, my brother, my neighbour, my friend, whatever," and I had no idea that that had been their life experience. Now, 40, 50 years ago, when I was growing up, a diagnosis of cancer was something that really wasn't talked about. It was almost a taboo. And I think we're in the same place, actually, with brain cancers. So if we're going to actually make the progress that we need, then we, all of us, have to start talking about this much more. The experience has got to be shared.
I agree completely with what the right honourable gentleman has said. To borrow a phrase, it's good to talk about brain cancer, and that's why we're here today in this chamber, to raise awareness. Because loved ones dying still remains amongst some people a great taboo about which we are fearful of saying anything. When my late first wife died of cancer at the age of 26, I was struck by my colleagues at work, wonderful people, found it almost impossible to mention when I went back to work what had happened. And I understand why, because before it happened to me, I would have been like them. You think I will say the wrong thing. I will cause someone to break down in tears. And when it happens to you, you come to realise there's nothing special to say. You just have to go up to the person and say, "How are you?" and listen. And yes, they will cry and you will cry. But it's so much better than hiding it inside yourself with the suffering that it brings. And that is what this report is trying to do, to make sure we are doing everything that we possibly can. Now, there are very good reasons why brain cancer is proving so difficult to treat. And I learnt about that as the other members of the inquiry panel did. It's a very, very complex organ, the brain. I'd never heard of the blood-brain barrier before. I'm not sure I still understand it, but I heard a lot about it in the evidence that we received. We learnt about treatments that have been tried and failed. We learnt about the desperation of those with brain tumours to get on trials which might just offer some hope, not of a cure, but of a few more months. And when you have a diagnosis of a brain tumour, every second, let alone every minute, every week, every month, is extremely precious. And we heard of the despair of people who are unable to get themselves or their loved ones. And it's so particularly poignant when it is children who have a brain tumour. So what we're calling for is a renewed and determined focus on doing every single thing that we can to change the situation. Not because we're naive about the difficulties, but they are many, but because it's the very least we can do for the people who find themselves in this position. So, of course, we have called for greater investment. But I thought the honourable gentleman explained very, very well why the funds that have been made available, and I welcome them enormously, and have been set aside for brain tumour research, haven't all been allocated and spent. And it's not for want of willingness. It is the point that he made about the lack of suitable research proposals coming forward and the frustration which came across so clearly from that one evidence session in particular of those who have put their research proposals forward to the research bodies, have been knocked back and feel they didn't really understand what we are trying to do because those who sit on those panels may not have expertise in the field of brain tumour research. And that's why we would strongly encourage the research councils to look more widely and more favourably upon proposals for brain tumour research. We have a funding system which has been built in silos. It needs to be better joined up from basic science through to clinical trials. And I would at this point want to pay tribute, we all would, to the clinicians, the scientists, the doctors and others who work their socks off to try and crack this problem and find a treatment. And that's why we have made some very specific recommendations. The example of biobanking and tissue samples, it seemed so simple when people talked about it, that when you're dealing with any disease, but particularly when you're dealing with this disease, does it make sense to pool all of the information that you have available about what we've learned, what we still don't know, what may work, what may not work, but it clearly isn't happening. And that's quite a simple thing to do, so that anyone who is undertaking research can draw upon all of the available material as they apply their mind and their scientific skill and their determination to finding a cure. We're also calling for patients with brain tumours to have equity of access to trials of new anti-cancer drugs that are currently may only be available to patients with other types of malignant cancer, because there can be a fear that if you bring other people into the trial, it will somehow skew the results. If you're dying, that is not your concern. Your concern is, might this possibly work to save the life of the person I love or of myself? And I hope, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this report and the views of all of the people who so generously gave their time, and we'd like to thank all of them, will have an impact as collectively we roll up our sleeves, we redouble our efforts, we express even greater determination to find treatments and cures for this cruel disease that shortens the lives of so many people that we have come to know already and love. And what keeps us going in difficult times is hope. And I do think that these recommendations will offer exactly that. For as one patient said, if you have hope, you have life.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.